My name is Alina Grayson, and I am 29 years old. I live in the quiet town of Maplewood, Illinois. I work as a software developer at a tech company that prides itself on innovation. My role involves collaborative projects with my team, which is supposed to be a rewarding and engaging experience. However, not every team member shares my sense of responsibility. My world was rather simple. I had a small circle of friends who understood the demands of our work, and we often collaborated late into the night to ensure our projects were completed successfully. I took my job seriously, but I was not without my quirks. I love to explore the intricacies of programming, take on challenges headfirst, and enjoy the sweet taste of satisfaction when I successfully debugged a troublesome line of code. But all of that changed when Mackenzie joined our team. Mackenzie was my nemesis. She was also 29, but unlike me, she was wholly uninterested in the work we were doing. Her favorite activities included playing solitary games on her computer or taking lengthy naps behind her closed office door. It was maddening. Day after day, I would turn in my projects, pouring my heart and soul into them while I could hear the dull sounds of her clicking away at her card games just a few feet away. It was as if she had been installed to ensure my misery. Mackenzie's desk was constantly cluttered with candy wrappers and soda cans, and her computer screen frequently displayed the bright colors of a never-ending card game. Meanwhile, I was busting tail to keep up with deadlines, only to have my efforts undermined by her lack of interest. I felt they were robbing me of my company's future. As submission dates loomed, my frustrations reached a boiling point. One afternoon, while I was furiously typing away, an idea struck me. What if I could create a little chaos in her world? Nothing too extreme, just a light jab to remind her of the importance of teamwork and accountability. After all, I was tired of feeling undermined by someone who had no concept of commitment. I snuck into the IT department late one evening, my heart racing with excitement. I had done my research and armed myself with a hexadecimal editor. Sitting in the dim light of the room, I opened the Solitaire executable file, and my fingers danced over the keyboard as I made alterations to the code. I specifically targeted a section in the middle, blanking it out, allowing my creativity to manifest as a harmless, yet effective, little sabotage. Once I saved the file and reset the system date and time to mimic the original installation time, I felt a rush of adrenaline. I could hardly sit still as I thought about how effective my plan would be. I imagined her attempts to launch the game leading to sheer chaos, her computer crashing at the most inconvenient moments. I took a deep breath, knowing I was on the verge of executing the perfect crime. The following morning, I watched from my desk as Mackenzie strolled into the office, completely oblivious to the devious trap laid out for her. She sat at her desk and, as if nothing was wrong, proceeded to load the Solitaire app on her computer. I could hardly contain my anticipation as I peered over my shoulder, observing the fiery excitement in her eyes as she tried to squeeze in a quick round before the day began. And then it happened. The screen froze, colors distorted, and then crash. Her computer shut down without warning. I was on the verge of bursting into laughter and could hardly wait to see her face when she realized that her precious card game had betrayed her. I was cautiously optimistic. My plan seemed to go off without a hitch. Or so I thought. What I did not foresee was the twist of fate that would turn my harmless prank into an unexpected calamity. Mackenzie, with her gift for evasion, managed to spin the situation in her favor. As her computer repeatedly crashed, she insisted to our boss that there was a deeper issue at hand. She never admitted that it was her constant opening of Solitaire that was causing the problem. No, she portrayed herself as an innocent victim, a tragic casualty of technological warfare. Our manager became increasingly agitated, scrambling to find a solution to this so-called mystery. I could only observe in disbelief as poor Richard, our boss, the very picture of bafflement, began running around the office, seeking insight from colleagues. I could see the frustration brewing in his eyes as he paced back and forth, whispering into his phone, reaching out to support and begging technological geniuses for troubleshooting advice. What was once a light-hearted attempt to get Mackenzie's attention had transformed into an all-out circus. My plan had not only failed, it was making matters worse. It became a cruel joke around the office, with my coworkers exchanging knowing glances while Richard stumbled over the truth, constantly shaking his head and muttering about computer gremlins. Each time Mackenzie sweetly suggested that she might need a new device, I felt my heart sink. At a low point, I realized that the frustration of sharing an office with Mackenzie was now met with the entire team witnessing how her incompetence was spiraling into madness. As weeks passed, I grew increasingly disheartened and ashamed of my petty revenge. The once simple idea of embarrassing her had backfired in a way I could never have expected. After much contemplation, I decided to confront her directly. One day, I gathered my courage and walked to her office door. I knocked lightly, and when she invited me in with a perfunctory wave, I stepped into her space with a mixture of determination and vulnerability. "Mackenzie," I said firmly, "we need to talk." I could tell she was a little thrown off, but I pressed forward. "You know I work hard to keep our projects on track, and your disruptions have not gone unnoticed." With each sentence, I could almost feel the tension rising as I laid my case out for her to ponder. The more I spoke, the more I saw the light shift in her eyes. Maybe there was a chance she would understand. I thought that maybe, just maybe, this would be the turning point. Yet the conversation took a disastrous turn. Instead of owning up to anything, she deflected blame and strategically reworded my words so that I appeared the villain in the story. My heart raced with disbelief as she pointed out my flaws and inadequacies while cleverly weaving her web of deceit. In that moment, it was clear to me that there was no getting through to her. My heart sank, and I could feel the defeat creep in. The following weeks were filled with tension, resentment, and misunderstandings. I was stuck in a loop, clamoring for justice while letting my irritation fester. Each day became an uphill battle, and I was losing the battle against Mackenzie and my own indecision. I decided that perhaps there was a way to turn the tables once more, except this time, I would do it right and leave no room for blowback. One late night at the office, I hatched a new plan, one that would require all my tech skills. I began to gather evidence of her incompetence. I meticulously documented every time she breached her responsibilities, every project she derailed with her mistaken assumptions, and every time her absence from the team impacted our work. It took weeks, late nights, and an unwavering determination on my part, but I needed something substantial to present to Richard. At last, the day of reckoning arrived. With my evidence in hand, a neatly organized dossier of instances where her negligence interfered with our responsibilities, I walked into Richard's office. The atmosphere felt electric with possibilities, and the weight of my notes hung heavily in my hands. Richard looked mildly surprised to see me, but I could tell he was also curious. "Sit down, Alina," he said, a note of caution in his voice. "What is it?" I placed the dossier in front of him and held my breath as he flipped through the pages, scanning my hard work. I spoke, laying out the facts carefully and articulately, just like any good programmer does. From her lack of participation in critical meetings to her casual indifference towards deadlines, I showcased an alarming pattern that could not be overlooked. She is impacting not only my performance but the entire team's morale. Richard's brows furrowed as he listened. By the time I was finished, the once friendly and relaxed atmosphere had entirely shifted. Shock and disbelief clouded his features as he processed what I had shared. I could tell he appreciated my initiative, but seemed torn. After all, Mackenzie was an appealing employee in a sociable sense, and no one wanted to believe that a colleague could be so negligent. "Thank you for bringing this to my attention, Alina. I will look into it," he finally said after a long silence, and I felt a spark of hope ignite within me. I believed I had finally uncovered the truth and that Mackenzie's time was up. Days turned into weeks again. I was restless as Richard delved into the matter. I felt empowered, convinced that my efforts would bring about change, and indeed it did. After a tense meeting with Mackenzie, Richard called her into his office, and I decided to stay close by, pretending to work while listening intently. While I could not hear the entire conversation, the tone of their exchange was telling. Richard was assertive. I could sense that he was laying down the law to Mackenzie while tempering his disappointment. I could feel vindication wash over me. It was on a Thursday afternoon when Richard's door swung open, and Mackenzie emerged looking distinctly flustered. She shot me an icy glance before storming away, and in that moment, I knew I had won the battle. Richard stepped into the main office, where I was still stationed at my desk, and he caught my eye. "Alina, I need to speak with you again." My heart raced as I followed him back into his office. "You were right," he confessed, rubbing the back of his neck as he made the admission. "Mackenzie has been slipping through the cracks for too long." I nodded, feeling a swell of pride in my chest. "Effective immediately, we are switching teams, and she will be working on data entry and maintenance rather than software development," he continued, reinforcing the action he had decided upon. Relief washed over me as I felt the tension dissipate. Finally, there would be equilibrium in our work environment. I had stood my ground and fought for what was rightfully mine, an equitable team dynamic. What I never anticipated was that this victory would come with unexpected consequences. In the wake of Mackenzie being reassigned, I suddenly found myself in the crosshairs of her rage. She approached me one late evening after everyone had left the office, and I could see her eyes were glistening with tears mixed with fury. "You really think you won, don't you?" she spat, her voice quaking. "Mackenzie, this was not just about you. It was about fairness," I replied, standing my ground. "Fairness," she repeated incredulously. "You think reporting me is fair? Enjoy your little victory, but I will be back." Days turned into weeks and weeks into months, and the threat of her return loomed like a storm cloud. As a software developer, I thrived on the challenges and adaptations that a new project presented. However, I was equally aware that Mackenzie had the power to make my workplace miserable yet again. Finally, after all my efforts, she became just a distant memory tucked away in her new role, and I embraced my newfound peace at work. I focused on creating innovative software and collaborating with my supportive teammates. It was a new normal, one I cherished immensely, or so I thought. Then, one autumn afternoon, while I was deeply engrossed in a particularly complex coding challenge, I received a message from an unknown number. Curiosity fizzed within me as I hesitated to open it, and when I finally did, I felt a chill sweep over me. "Dear Alina," it read, "you have not seen the last of me." I froze, my heart racing as I glanced around the office. I knew I had made the right choice, but the thought of Mackenzie plotting her return rattled me. Determined to maintain my professional environment, I spent the next few days arming myself with as many resources as possible. Little did I know that this was not a time for fear. It was the beginning of a new turn of events. Inspired by my frustrations and thirst for something more, I decided to take a leap of faith. Instead of allowing myself to fall into paranoia, I channeled my energy into an unexpected venture. I reached out to a few trusted friends and colleagues who shared my interest in programming and proposed we create our own tech startup, a company where accountability, teamwork, and integrity were the guiding principles. As we sat in brainstorming sessions late into the night, fueled by energy drinks and leftover pizza, something shifted. The very fear that had once tied me down transformed into motivation and excitement. Together with my friends, we schemed, created a plan, and formed something I could take pride in. Months later, our startup blossomed, gaining attention within the tech community for our innovative ideas and strong ethics. Just as we were on the verge of launching our first major app, I received another message from Mackenzie. "Congratulations on your startup. You will regret pushing me aside so easily," it read. But in that moment, I felt a newfound strength within me. I was no longer the timid, frustrated Alina that had let Mackenzie's bad behavior affect her for so long. Through challenges and experiences, I had transformed myself into a leader, someone who could command a room and rally a team behind a common purpose. The day finally arrived for our launch party, and as we prepared, I felt an electricity in the air, a sense of accomplishment built upon resilience. The room was filled with fellow developers, curious clients, and eager friends, all coming together to support our new endeavor. As I stood behind the podium, I couldn't help but think of my journey, of the moments of frustration, the necessity of finding strength within. I addressed my audience and reflected on the things that had once snagged me in a dark place, turning it into a journey of empowerment. "We learn from our most profound challenges," I stated, smiling widely. "They shape us into who we are meant to be." And in that instant, I silently vowed that no matter what Mackenzie tried to do to disrupt my newfound happiness, I was back in control of my destiny. I was unyielding, and I was no longer that scared little girl who let others walk all over her. Life would turn, and with each twist and turn, I embraced the uncertainty, knowing my revenge came not from malice, but through creating a brighter path for myself. And as I made my way through the crowd, I took solace in the thought that perhaps, just perhaps, it was Mackenzie who would learn the most from embracing the shadows of her actions.